You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Frank DiScipio, founding partner at DiScipio Law Group, PLLC, focusing on personal injury, a lot of med mal in New York City. Great to have you. How are you?
Hi, Benny. Everything's good. How are you?
Good. How are things in Manhattan, man? I miss it down there. It's awesome that you're
New York City
from New York City today.
Yeah, New York City is back and kicking post-pandemic. There's action. It's lively. It's nice to see attorneys back in court and see familiar faces after a little bit of a situation where things were closed for us as practitioners and as a city as a whole.
That's right. And I mean, I know you're like a big litigator, so that's got to be tough when you're, doing that over Zoom court.
It changes the dynamic of everything.
Yeah.
Between myself and my colleagues and the judges. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So we featured you on Lawyer Stories today on Instagram and on Facebook and on our platform on LinkedIn there. And a very interesting story. You have a lot, that went on. And tell us. Let's start with your dad, like coming over from Italy, and like tell us like what that was like growing up.
Yeah, my father came to the United States in his late teens. He was in high school when he came to the United States, and where he came from wasn't a populous area of Italy. I mean, it's literally, I think the roaming dogs outnumber the people where he was born, and that's true. And it was an interesting dynamic having a dad who pushed education, but yet with the opposite effect, didn't have the opportunity to go to school.
Right.
So that really shaped sort of my decision to go to law school, my decision to seek higher education and sort of see where things go. Because every once in a while he'd open up about things. And one thing he always said was, I think I did pretty good, but imagine what I could have done with an education. And as a kid, I was like, all right, so this education thing is important. I should pay attention to this.
That's right. And what I find interesting is usually the question I ask on the show is like, what moment did you have where you knew you wanted to be a lawyer, or like, what was your motivation for becoming a lawyer? And for you, in your lawyer story, you use the word logical extension of your skill set. So I was hoping that you could explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, in college and in law school, I worked in sales, selling men's clothing and loose diamonds, jewelry. And I found that my ability to close sales, my ability to communicate with people, my ability to figure out what people needed and deliver on those needs, that's very similar to what needed to be done as a litigator.
Tell us about the loose diamonds, Frank, that you mentioned. No, is there anything more to that? That's pretty interesting, man.
I mean, New York City is the diamond capital of the world for
right.
most parts. 47th Street is where most diamonds are traded, and there's some crazy stories on.
Oh, I bet. Like maybe Diamond Stories will pick this up if there is such a thing. But yeah, that's cool. Like, so I think like as we progress in your lawyer story, we sort of see how the sales, the natural extension of that has helped as you've gone along in your career. So you just felt that it was a natural extension, like litigating, becoming a lawyer, and you decided to go on with it. And you're a New York City guy, Fordham, New York Law School, like that's your thing.
I for better or for worse, in my opinion, for better. I was born here in New York City in Brooklyn. I grew up in a suburb, Staten Island, and you currently reside in Manhattan. So yeah, I'm a New York City guy for undergrad, for law school, and I've lived here my entire life.
That's awesome. I have a good friend over in Staten Island from law school, actually. So tell us about your law school experience. You got there, what was that like? Was it totally different than undergrad? Were you very motivated to, be at the top of your class? Like, what was your take on your law school experience?
Yeah, I mean, walking into law school, it was a shock to some degree. There's definitely a level of competition between students that didn't really jive with my willingness to always help out, my colleagues, my co-students, or even just help out anyone really that needed to talk about what was going on in the law school environment. And that settled after the first year. And I was lucky that during law school, I actually joined the law firm as a paralegal, as a law clerk, as an intern. And that was midway towards the end of my first year, my 1L year. And that was tremendous.
That's amazing. How did you find that, by the way, that job?
I had a extended family member who I still keep in contact very closely, that I contacted. I knew he was a lawyer, and I had not spoken to him much. We didn't have much of a relationship. And I said to this gentleman, hey, any chance the firm that you work at, which at the time happened to be a medical malpractice defense firm and still is, any chance I could get a job with you? And I'll never forget the managing partner interviewing me, and I bring a CV, and he goes to me, so what have you done in the law? And I said, nothing. And I said to him, but I think my experience in sort of working with clients, understanding sales, and having some interest in medicine, not enough interest to go to medical school, obviously, but interest in medicine, it was a good fit for the firm, and it just worked out.
They liked you. You got the job, and you were there. Is this the one you were there for 12 years?
Yeah, I stayed with them for 12 years in total with the the law clerk gig. Then I graduated, stayed with them. It was a tremendous lucky straw being there.
That's awesome. So, no, go ahead. Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
So, Fred, so tell us what the importance of like having a mentor is.
In the field of litigation, particularly in New York City, as far as I know it, and just the vast size of it, it's amazing that as your career progresses, as you learn, as you patiently learn and watch, that you can get friends and mentors, both in your firm and outside, that you can call with questions later in your career. And there's this sort of group thing where you can talk out a legal issue or a problem you're having in a deposition. And I think not being afraid to defer to the mentors and ask them questions, not being afraid to ask a stupid question is huge in the growth as a litigator.
Yeah. So what was the 12 years like? You were there as a clerk, and then you graduated law school, and then you stayed on as an attorney. You had a position.
Yeah, I stayed as an associate. I had a caseload, but I was blessed. I actually had the opportunity to watch. This particular firm had 2 to 3 very recognized trial attorneys. And I had the opportunity to watch second seat and partake in probably 15 trials a year at one point in time.
Wow. Second seat. So what does second seat mean? I mean, I think I know what it means. You kind of sit there, you're taking notes. I think you were trying to, if I remember in your story, you were saying that you were trying to anticipate the questions in the questioning that was going to be asked next.
Yeah, second seating is basically sitting in and really, in the beginning, scrambling to figure out what's going on, right? Your first, second seat, you have no idea what a jury charge is. You have no idea what they mean by prepare a proposed verdict sheet. You're just looking in the sky like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But as you progress and you learn, the second seating becomes much more involved. You'll do the charge conference with the judge. You may even examine a witness with lead counsel at the table. But most of it is sitting and taking notes and giving feedback to the attorney who's questioning live about what areas they may have missed in liability that you want to bring up, or what areas in damage you want to discuss. So it really becomes a give and take. It's not as if you're just watching. You should be thinking while it's going. And like you said, kind of anticipating the questions coming and thinking, all right, if I was doing this alone, how would I ask the next question?
That's interesting. So taking notes and trying to pick up on things that maybe were missed by the person actually like in the first chair or litigating or whatever. Yeah, that's awesome. So what advice do you have for someone who wants to learn the art of trial?
Be patient. Be patient. Find a firm where you have a mutual respect for whoever that firm's lead trial counsel is. You'll typically have a few attorneys who are the trial counsel for that firm. And befriend them, work hard for them, ask questions, and just listen. Be patient, because you don't learn how to try a case in law school. You learn how to try a case by being in the courtroom with people who know how to do it and really paying attention and giving full attention to that trial and understanding the facts and understanding what's coming up and what to anticipate before it even exits anyone's mouth in the courtroom.
Were you involved like in law school and like trial advocacy and all like moot court and all those things?
Yeah, in my last year, I got involved. I had a really great torts 2 teacher, which is like advanced torts. And luckily at that point in time, for that class, I did very well because I had already been involved in trials as a law clerk, right? So I had been going to trials and sitting in the back and watching.
Right.
So it was amazing to see how much I knew how to do just watching the mentors versus watching other students sort of stumble around how to communicate what their position is in a case, to a mock jury.
Interesting. So that really goes to show that it's a lot of experience, like, and you really got to get somebody that you can go observe in court, and you can sit there and have a mentor. It's unlike any other profession, I think, where you want to be able to be in that position to like just soak it all in. So we have this theme of sales. Like you did sales for a while, you were doing the diamond thing, and tell me, like, what does sales and like litigating, trying a case have in common, really?
Well, whether you're a defendant or a plaintiff, you're selling your version of the facts to that jury, right? And the best part of sales, and the place where you can apply sales the most, in my opinion, in the trial, is actually during jury selection. It's really the only time you can talk directly to the jurors, get to know them, sense them, and have an understanding of what type of people they are and what kind of stories they have. So sales plays into your ability to just connect with people and find out who they are, for better or for worse for your case.
So you go to another firm after the 12-year firm where you were working through law school, to the beginning of your career, and you start doing, was that when you started doing plaintiff's work?
I had a period where I was starting to obtain plaintiff's work from either friends, family members, and then I started to refer out that work to plaintiff's attorneys, and it dawned on me that I really enjoyed the intake process, listening to those potential clients' stories about what had happened to them or their family, and how it applied to their facts of the case. And I made a decision that I'd like to switch sides and do plaintiff's work.
Yeah, no, totally. Do you think it helps to have, like, they say sometimes if you're a criminal defense or if you're a prosecutor, it helps to become a criminal defense attorney, like you can switch sides. Is it the same type of thing? Like you learn one side and you feel like you're more, you know more and how to process and present the cases if you have like both sides, like you have knowledge of both sides.
Yeah, I mean, being a prior defense attorney and being blessed with the environment that I was a prior defense attorney and having all that training, it's a tremendous help for me, specifically in the medical malpractice industry here in New York, because I got to know all the players. That's one, both the players at the court level and my adversaries, other attorneys, and two, I had a real understanding of how a medical malpractice case is defended, and with equal knowledge, how to prosecute one.
So tell us when it was time to move on and launch your own firm. Like, how did you know?
At least for me personally, before launching a firm and thinking about the idea of actually being responsible for my clients' cases, essentially on my own and responsible for those cases up to and through the point of the jury verdict, it took a lot of self-reflection about wondering whether I had the aptitude and the knowledge to do so. And I realized that the skill set that I had put together and my strengths as far as being a litigator, that I was ready to do that. And I don't think I've done that alone. I've phoned a friend many times. I phoned a friend today during a deposition because I was up against an attorney objecting to certain questions that I thought were proper. And phone a friend in the legal industry, that's really something you can't replace as someone who goes out on their own, especially in a competitive industry like medical malpractice.
Yeah, okay, for sure. So in your firm, is one of your mottos is caring, dedicated, and responsive, correct?
Correct.
Tell us about that. Why are those so important to you?
The aspect of plaintiff's work that I enjoy the most really is that first intake call with the individual. We wholeheartedly listen to the client. I will spend time on the phone with that client during the initial intake, an hour, 2 hours. We can do a Zoom. I even offer to meet in person at their convenience where they are. That is a very important part of being caring and dedicated to their case, and it creates a connection with that client from day one, where they trust you as an individual with their case, and they know that you care about where they're coming from. Because they all have stories, and all of their stories are different. And unfortunately, in some of these stories, they're painful ones. So there really is a connection you make with the client. And being responsive is, in today's day and age, I can text from my office number, we can email, I can pick up the phone, basically anywhere from my cell phone. So we just try to make sure that clients know that when they reach out with a question, even if it's trivial, that it's okay, and we'll get back to it.
That's awesome. So what would you say it takes for somebody to be a med mal attorney, a personal injury attorney? Because you're dealing with people at the most vulnerable stages in their life. Sometimes they're really, they're hurt. They don't really know what to do. They're looking for an attorney. They call you up. So what makes a good attorney who can show empathy? What's the main thing?
Yeah, I mean, for any personal injury action, it's not just the client that you're communicating with. It's also an extended family. There's always an extended family that's part of the discussion, whether that be a spouse, a loved one, a child. On any personal injury case, you always have an aspect of having to communicate to that entirety. And I think that the important part to remember is that you have to make sure that everyone understands where the case is headed and sort of what the goals are in that case to properly respond to what they want to achieve.
Okay, right. So your firm's around 5 months old, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's amazing. So what advice would you give to somebody about to launch a firm?
Keep overhead low.
Yeah.
I think be ready to do it and make sure that whatever industry you're going to do it in, that at the point you make that decision, you have garnered some type of respect with your peers in the legal industry and the judiciary. That you'll have peers that respect you, that know you, that recall you from other cases they may have. And I think that helps the litigation process so much and avoids a lot of wasted efforts, time, and just blood, sweat, and tears on trivial issues that really don't need to be litigated between attorneys.
Yeah, totally. And you have a lot of connections, as we talked about, friendly, affable, you have a lot of networks in the legal industry there in Manhattan and probably elsewhere. What about talk to me a little bit about elders? How does respect for older attorneys help a younger attorney's development?
Whether that older attorney is your adversary or your coworker in a firm, you have to assume that they have more knowledge and experience about whatever the issue is that you're litigating with them. Now, typically, you'll run into these older attorneys in the courtroom. It's you, the older attorney, and the judge. My advice is to listen to what they have to say. Don't react immediately, because words have a lot of meaning, especially when they're short and before a judge.
Yeah.
And really think about what legal precedent you're going to speak about and rely on in responding to an attorney that may already know the answer to that position.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, and on the flip side, if you're working with them, or even if they're your adversary, take time after that interaction to talk to them about what occurred with the judge. There's a lot to be learned in the courthouse, which is why I think, the courthouse reopening has really been a positive aspect on the litigation market, especially for younger attorneys.
Do you think that older attorneys practice differently than the younger attorneys? And I don't mean to set that up in these attorneys are they're writing with a carved rock on their tablet or whatever. I mean, do you think it's more old school, there's tradition. I feel like there's the traditional practice of law, people grabbing books and reading and going and getting like the inserts, and now it's a lot of internet based. Like from what you've seen, is it like do they practice differently, or you can't really tell from your quick interactions?
I I think that the best answer to that would be that they've adopted some of the technology, but I think for me personally, still having some of my old books to rely upon, looking at them to then research on the internet on a legal service, that they have a good mix. I think they have a good mix
Okay.
of both, of
That's
writing
fair.
through rocks and going on the app.
Oh, right, there you go. That's fair. That's fair. So, Frank, tell us more about DiScipio Law. You started this firm 5 months ago. What do you got? Who do you got working for you? Where are you set up? What cases are you mostly taking? Just tell us about it.
Yeah, so we're set up in downtown Manhattan on Broad Street. We're partnered with another firm in sharing some space. And in that realm, a lot of the clients that we're getting are actually referrals from other lawyers.
Wow.
Lawyers that I met, as a defense attorney, lawyers that I've become friendly with over the course of the past, 13, 14 years, and lawyers who I have a mutual respect for, and that call me, when they have a case that comes across their desk that may not be their cup of tea.
Okay.
And that could be younger lawyers, and it could also be older lawyers.
What is the best way to network with attorneys in New York City?
The revival of the bar associations, whether that be the New York Bar Association, the Richmond County Bar Association, the City Bar Association, going to bar events where you see other lawyers and judges outside of the realm of a courthouse is very good.
Okay.
There's no question. That's the best way. Just get involved.
Get involved. So, by the way, here at Lawyer Stories, like if you ever see anybody like on our platform that you want to meet and you want me to make the warm introduction, like that's part of what we're going to be doing with Lawyer Stories Connect. So it would be like my pleasure to do that because we have several New York City attorneys. So I'd be happy to make an intro. If you don't know them already, Frank, I mean, chances are you might already, know that one. But we'd be happy to do that. And hey, maybe one day we have an event in New York City. We find a spot, we do a networking event. It'd be a little different than the bar, but it could be fun.
I'm totally interested in both those options, and I think it's a great idea. New York is a big city, and personal injury in New York is a large creature, but it's a lot smaller than you think.
Right. Right. So I was going to ask about like the integrity of like in New York City, like of litigation and the market and like. Is it how do you make it like a smaller community and a smaller market? It feels very big, but I feel like the actual like legal community is smaller than one would think.
Yeah, the legal community in New York for PI work is obviously massive. Where it starts to subset is what areas are you in? Are you in catastrophic injuries? Are you in medical malpractice? But really beyond that, it's the lawyers that you would see sitting in the lawyer's room who are getting ready to pick juries. You'd be in the lawyer's room and they wouldn't be on your case, but you'd have a nod of the head and you had to come back the next day because there wasn't enough jurors. And whether you were second seating with your boss or doing it on your own, that's when you start to really, create a relationship with these lawyers because they understand that you're also a trial lawyer and you talk about different topics. They may soundboard their cases off of you. And those spiral then into a friendship email, seeing their bar events, and then you really do become friends. I have plaintiffs' attorneys that I became friends with as a defense attorney that I rely on today for some of the questions I have.
That's awesome. That sounds great. So how do you think like being a young founding partner at a firm in New York City, do you think that works to the advantage of yourself and your clients?
Yeah, I think there's a certain energy that comes with being a young attorney who's sort of driven on results for the client and also gives the client the time to tell their tale of what occurred. An intake call, and like I said, an intake call is really an important part of the case where you get to learn the client's story.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about a medical malpractice case is you do have a written history of sort of what occurred, right, in the medical records. And then you have your client's story. So when you listen to your client's story first, and you really take notes and you dedicate that hour or 2 hours to it, then you finally get the chart and read it. It's kind of interesting. They will match and they will differ in certain areas, and it's quite interesting. It's kind of exciting. It's like a novel.
So it's like I thought you injured your arm. It says it's your leg, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not as blatant, maybe, but sort of like.
Or, you went to go see the doctor and you told him X that you had certain complaints and maybe you read the records and the complaints are there. I'm like, all right, my client had a good recollection. Or you read it and you say, well, those complaints aren't there. How come? Maybe you revisit it with your client. So yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of really novel after you've read heard the Cliff Note version.
Gotcha. So what kind of cases are you taking most? Like personal injury? Are you getting a lot of med mal? Are you getting what are the most? What should people be sending over to you?
I would say that we are certainly specializing in about 60% med mal. The remaining cases are motor vehicle accident cases or any cases involving some type of construction incident or accident. Those cases are good from my experience as a med mal attorney because you really have a good understanding of the medicine and the injuries, right? I know what those entail and what the surgeries are and are not.
Okay, so, and are those cases, are the incidents happening like in New York, like city, or like where mostly do they come from? Is it all New York City based?
Yes, it's all New York City based. Some of it is referrals from other clients. Some of it is Richmond County, being a smallish county, although I think there's like 500,000 people there. But sort of a subset, or people think of it as a subset of New York. My friend network in Staten Island and my legal network there has been great in referring cases, as has the Bar Association. So
Really? That's great.
yeah, the work comes from the 5 boroughs. That is where the work is concentrated.
It's awesome. Sounds like there's a lot going on in New York with all these injuries and injury attorneys and all this work that's out there. You know what I mean? That's great. Where do you see your firm in like 5 or 10 years?
I think in about 5 or 10 years, we will be at a point where we are trying 2 to 3 medical malpractice cases a year. And with trying those cases, earning a reputation and continuing a reputation of taking good cases and taking cases that we care about and that we're not afraid to take to a verdict.
That's awesome. And speaking of that, do you settle most of your cases? Are you going to court most of the time? How does that work?
If you have a good case, it will typically resolve. That's the saying, right, in litigation. But with equal logic, if you're not equipped to go pick a jury, go through the process of the trial, and take a verdict, you may look weak to your adversary. So the reality is you need to be prepared to try every case. I always say, and I joke with my peers, that when I take a case in, after I've taken my case notes, I go and I think about, all right, what's the verdict sheet going to look like on this case? Before looking at medical records, what's the proposed verdict sheet going to look like?
Right.
And reason backwards the issues that the case may have, because all cases have issues, whether you're the plaintiff or the defendant.
Right. And you do that yourself too. I think some PI cases just try to take volume and then like outsource the cases that don't settle, or the cases that are going to go to trial. They might farm it out to like another attorney, but you actually take all the cases yourself to trial.
Yes, the cases that we take, under DiScipio Law Group, those are my clients. More likely than not, unless there's a trial conflict, I'll be producing them for their deposition. And if it's not me, it's someone I trust. And beyond that, if the case goes to trial, I'm the one taking the case to trial. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the clients, briefed on that in the beginning, and they're told, listen, I'm not going to hand you off. I hope you're happy with my legal services. If you're not at any point in time, tell me, and we can figure out why. But the reality is, so that they're aware, this case is mine till the end.
That's great. And being like a young attorney there in New York, you have so much experience. I mean, dating back to law school, right? Like we talked about having great, you had mentors, you were sitting in second chair, you had a firm for 12 years, you have a lot of experience really under your belt. So I think that's probably very reassuring for a lot of your clients to know in case a case needs to go to trial.
Yeah, and I think you need that, or at least I felt that I needed to make sure I had enough of that, before deciding to be responsible for my clients' cases.
For sure. So tell us about like staying positive in the profession and like the rush of like a jury trial that you get. Like, I guess maybe it goes back to like making the sale,
Litigation can be taxing. Anyone who tells you they love it, day in and day out, they may not be telling you the full truth. However, there is really a rush to, conducting your deposition and having, confessions by the physician or by the defendant in a case that are slam dunks. There's certainly a rush in picking a jury and opening, as scary as that may sound and seem, and how much work goes into the preparation. It's really nice in those times to stay positive, to be able to concentrate on one case, one thing, and that for that week or 2 or 3, that is your primary focus. It really is a rewarding experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're just moving right along. You got your firm. You're going to be hiring anybody soon? Are you at capacity for cases? Like, what's next, really?
Yeah, we're going to continue to build our caseload. We've had a really nice, referral turn. Some cases, unfortunately, you can't take, and some you do. Especially in the med-mals, you need to be selective about the cases you decide to keep on. And, because they're long litigated cases, and on the motor vehicle cases with equal logic, you have to make sure you have an injury in New York. If you don't have an injury that's considered serious, your case is going to get thrown out sooner or later. So, there's a lot that goes into building your book of cases, and the timing of when you put them into suit. There's an old mantra that basically says, before you put the case into suit as a plaintiff, you should already have an understanding of what their motion for summary judgment at the end of the case is going to be. If
Right.
you face one, how are you going to defeat it? So, as long as you're not up against the statute of limitations toll or any type of issue like that, you really want to make sure your case is worked up, you understand it, and you put it into suit. So we're in the process we've put a number of cases into suit recently. It is sometimes nice to spread them out so that time can be dictated to them, so they don't all sort of follow the same lifespan. So that's where we are.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. That's great. Well, congratulations on all your success thus far, man. I look forward to checking in and seeing how everything's going. Is there anything that we left out today that you want to tell the Lawyer Stories community that we didn't touch upon?
No, just thank you to the New York City legal market. I've had a lot of friends in the New York City legal market. I enjoy working with all the attorneys, my adversaries, my peers, the judges. There's a lot to be learned from just listening, looking up to certain attorneys, and sort of taking a step back and really paying attention to what's going on in the courtroom or during a deposition. So if you take that and you think about that, and I do have to say thank you to the 5 boroughs and the attorneys here that litigate cases with me.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Frank. DiScipio Law Group, and stay right there. And everybody else, thanks for tuning in wherever you are in the world today. Enjoy yourselves. Cheers.